When we read Scripture, it's easy to forget that these events didn't happen in isolation. They happened in cities, under governments, and among real people shaped by the world around them.
The opening chapters of Genesis emerged in a world already filled with stories about creation. By the time Genesis was written and compiled by Moses, human beings were living in organized cities governed by kings and pharaohs, surrounded by temples and shaped by mythologies that explained why the world existed and who exactly controlled it. This world was centered in the ancient Near East, in places like modern-day Mesopotamia, where civilizations like Sumer, Akkad, and Babylon were already thousands of years old. A land ruled by Egypt and places like Syro-Palestine, the rising empires of the Hittites and the Anatolians, and the kingdom of Elam just east of ancient Sumer. Now, in the ancient Near East, creation stories often follow the same pattern. Starting off with the gods were many, they were very polytheistic, such as in Egyptian creation, where their deities, for example, were Khepri, Ra, Adam, and Eden, the Ogdod, and the craftsman god Ptah, so on and so forth. On top of that, these gods fought amongst themselves, such as in the Greek mythology, where gods like Zeus and Hera overthrew the Titans like Cronus and Rhea for cosmic rule over the world. The world was created through violence, such as in the Norse mythology, where Odin and his brothers, Vili and Ve, murdered their father Ymir to create the world from his body. In some stories, humanity is created to do the gods a labor, so the gods can rest. Human beings existed to serve divine needs. In Sumerian mythology, humans were explicitly created from clay by the gods, specifically Enki and Ninmah, to be tireless servants, relieving the bored gods of manual labors like digging and farming. This is the intellectual and spiritual environment in which Genesis 1 is introduced. And it sounds nothing like the stories around it, the stories that existed at the time of other creation myths. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and read from Genesis. I will be reading in the New American Standard Bible yet again, slowly turning into my favorite translation ever. Austin can tell you so much more about this. But today we're going to be reading from Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 through 5. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was a formless and desolate emptiness, and darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, one day. Now, what immediately stands out here is order. There isn't any divine conflict. There's no rival gods. There's no struggle for power here. God speaks and creation responds. Like I said before, in the Norse mythology, Odin and his brothers Vili and Ve went to war, more or less, with their father Ymir, killing this great titan of what is considered a primordial deity, and turned his body into the world around it. Their entire creation myth starts off with the death of their father and creating the world from what remains. God isn't like that in Genesis. Creation simply responds to his words. He creates the world around him. In a world that believed chaos preceded order, Genesis declares that order precedes everything else. Creation wasn't accidental, it's intentional and structured. As Genesis continues, humanity is introduced with a role no other ancient culture assigned to humans. They're made in the image of God. Now keep in mind, being made in the image of God are only found in 3 religions in the entire world. That is Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. All of which have the same roots, the same God that formed it all. And as Christians, we're the only ones who were made in the image of God in creation. In the ancient world, an image represented authority. The kings placed statues and images of themselves in distant territories to show who ruled there. Egyptian pharaohs such as Ramses II or Amenhotep III. And Genesis here makes a staggering claim that every human being bears God's image. Not just the kings, not priests, not pharaohs, not diplomats, not politicians. Everyone is made in God's image. And this wasn't just some philosophical poetry. It was a direct challenge to ancient social hierarchy. Now, I want to pause again really quick. And I want to read a short section that kind of captures this idea clearly. This time we're going to be reading Genesis chapter 1, verses 26 through 28. Again, in the New American Standard Bible. Then God said, "Let us make in mankind in our image, according to our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the sky, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every crawling thing that crawls on the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the sky, and over every living thing that moves on the earth." In the ancient world, God rested because humans worked. In Near Eastern mythology, particularly the Babylonian Enuma Elish, and the earlier Akkadian Atrahasis, I believe it's called, epic, humans were created specifically to relieve the gods of their laborious work. This was known as Nulu, bearing the burden so the gods could finally rest and relax. And this was called Pashahu. Genesis reverses this information. God works and then rests. And on top of that, humans are invited into ordered work, not endless labor, just so God can rest. Work here isn't a curse like it was with the Babylonian creation. Instead, it was part of creation's design, God's design. If we move further within Genesis, Genesis chapter 2 retells creation from a more personal perspective. Instead of a more cosmic scope, we're lowered to a more intimate scope. This is where God forms humanity. God plants a garden, and God provides purpose and relationship here. In contrast to distant and different gods of surrounding cultures, the God of Genesis, our God, is present and involved. This is theology expressed through narrative, not some abstract story like we see in other cultures around this time. Genesis 1 and 2 doesn't argue against science. It argues against ideology. It challenges the mythologies that were a surrounding culture at that time. It challenges violent gods, divine kingship, human disposability, and chaos's ultimate reality. It challenges every single one of those every other myth had before it. In a world built on hierarchy and fear, Genesis declares dignity, order, and purpose. Creation, as presented in Genesis, is not about explaining the mechanics of the universe per se. It is about declaring who rules it. This is where Scripture in Time begins, not because it answers every modern question, but because it spoke powerfully into its own world. In the next episode, we'll watch how that ordered world fractures through rebellion, violence, and the rise of cities. Because scripture doesn't just begin in time, it unfolds within it.